The Gyeongbok drifted in the silent dark, a speck of warmth and noise against the endless cold. Its hull was a patchwork of salvage plates and welded seams, a testament to a lifetime of scraping by on the edge of known space. Inside the cockpit, the soft glow of screens illuminated the tired face of Captain June. He watched the derelict alien cruiser on the main scanner. It was a big one, a Union light cargo vessel called the Silent Blessing. Its transponder had died a week ago, and no one had come looking. In the fringes, that meant it was free for the taking. Anything on life signs? June asked, his voice a low rumble in the quiet cabin dot at the engineering station. Mina didn't look up from her console. Her fingers danced over the controls, pulling in every scrap of data. Nothing. No energy spikes, no heat, no movement. It's a ghost. A very big, very expensive ghost. A small smile touched her lips. The hull alloy alone could keep us fueled for a year. June nodded. It was almost too good. Derelicts this intact were rare. Usually, the Union scavenged their own, or pirates got there first. But the Union patrols had been thin lately, pulled toward the core systems for some big political meeting. And pirates avoided this sector. It was too empty, too quiet. It felt like the universe had left this one gift just for them. Prep the shuttle, he said. We'll go in soft. No cutting unless we have to. I want to see what they left behind. Mina moved with an efficiency June admired. Within minutes, they were both suited up in their patched environment suits, cycling through the airlock into their small, boxy shuttle. The trip over was short. The derelict ship loomed larger and larger, a sleek, dark shape against the starfield. One of its engine nacelles was scarred by what looked like micrometeorite damage, but the main hull was intact. They found a secondary cargo hatch with a manual override. With a grunt of effort, June cranked it open, revealing a dark interior. Their helmet lights cut through the blackness inside. The corridor was a mess. Emergency lighting strips lay dead on the floor. Tools and personal items floated in the zero gravity, frozen in the moment the artificial gravity failed. But it was the bodies that made them stop. 3 of them. Union species, bipedal with gray, leathery skin. They hung in the corridor, tethered to handrails by safety lines. Their suits were sealed, but the faceplates showed faces contorted in silent agony, mouths open in final screams. There were no visible wounds. What happened to them? Mina's voice was a whisper over the coms. Not a breach, June said, moving closer, careful not to touch anything. Their suits are sealed. Something inside. A chill that had nothing to do with temperature went down his spine. This wasn't a simple accident. They moved deeper, following the trail of debris toward the ship's command deck. The story became clearer. A biological containment unit in the science bay had shattered. Warning glyphs, now dark, were still etched on the walls. This had been a plague ship. Some bioweapon had gotten loose, killing the crew in hours. On the bridge, they found the captain still strapped into the command chair. Before him, on the main console, was a softly pulsating data core. It was a secure unit, the kind used for high-value or dangerous research. It glowed with a faint blue light, untouched. That's it, Mina said, pointing. That's the prize. That core is worth more than the entire hull. Union experimental data. We sell it to an information broker on New Daegu, and we never have to scrape again. June hesitated. Taking scrap metal was one thing. Taking active Union data was another. It was a sure way to get noticed, and getting noticed in the fringes was rarely good. But Mino was right. The look in her eyes, the hope of a life not spent counting credits for oxygen filters, decided him. Okay, get it. Be quick. Mina was a wizard with systems. She bypassed the basic security locks with a portable decoder she'd built herself. In 90 seconds, The core was free from its housing. She tucked the smooth, cylindrical device into a padded case on her utility belt. Got it. Let's go. They retraced their steps through the tomb-silent ship. The floating bodies seemed to watch them go. They were almost to the shuttle hatch when Mina's suit scanner beeped a warning. Proximity alert. A ship just dropped out of warp. Big one. Union signature. June's heart sank. How close? Too close. They're already hailing us. On the general channel, a voice crackled in their helmets, sharp and authoritative. It was an alien voice, translated by their suit software. Unidentified shuttle, this is the Galactic Union Patrol Vessel Steadfast Guardian. You are trespassing on a Union quarantine site. Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with force. June looked at Mina. Her face was pale in the helmet light. They were caught with a stolen data core from a bioweapon ship. This wasn't just trespassing. This was a crime that could get them locked away on a prison asteroid for decades. We have to run for it, Mina hissed. In this shuttle? They'd blast us to dust before we made it a kilometer. June felt a heavy weight settle in his stomach. This was the end. All their struggles for nothing. He opened the comm channel, his mouth dry. Union Vessel Steadfast Guardian. This is Captain Kim June of the independent salvage ship Gyeongbok. We read you. We are complying. The words tasted like ash. For a moment, there was only static. Then a new sound came through, not on the open channel, but as a faint crosstalk bleed from the Union ship's internal comms that their sensitive suit pickups caught. There were panicked alien voices, hurried and tense. One voice, likely the commander, snapped, "Visual confirmation. The intruders are. By the stars, they are human." Another voice, younger, replied, "Sir? Orders? Should we deploy the boarding team?" There was a burst of static, then the commander's voice again, loud and clear, but now it was edged with something June had never heard from a Union officer before, pure, undisguised fear. "Abort! All teams abort! Disengage weapons! Do not, I repeat, do not target that shuttle. Pull back to a safe distance." On their own cockpit display, they saw the massive, sleek shape of the Steadfast Guardian, which had been moving in for an intercept, suddenly veer away. Its running lights flashed in a frantic pattern. Its powerful tractor beam emitters, which had been powering up, went dark. Then the open channel came alive again with the commander's voice. It was strained, formal, and utterly bewildering. "Salvage vessel Gyeongbok. You are free to depart. The quarantine zone is being recalibrated. You will not be detained. Please proceed on your course." Steadfast Guardian out. The connection cut. On the scanner, the Union patrol ship was not just retreating. It was turning tail and burning hard back toward the warp lane, accelerating as if chased by demons. June and Mina stood frozen in the airlock of the dead ship, looking at the spot where the warship had been. The silence was absolute. "What?" Mina finally said, her voice trembling slightly. "Was that?" June could only shake his head, staring at the empty stars where the Union vessel had fled. The words echoed in his mind, clear and impossible. "They're human." "I don't know," he said quietly. "But let's get out of here before they change their mind." They boarded their shuttle in a daze, sealed the hatch, and detached from the derelict. The Gyeongbok swallowed them back into its familiar, grimy belly. As they powered up the engines and pointed their ship toward home, neither of them spoke. The glowing data core sat between them on the cockpit console, a fortune that suddenly felt heavy with unasked questions. The Union's terror was a greater mystery than any dead alien ship, and it was a mystery that was now irrevocably theirs. The trip back to the colony of New Dagu was a quiet one. June and Mina spoke only of necessary things, course corrections, system checks, the need to reroute power to the aging life support. They did not talk about the panic in the Union commander's voice. They did not talk about the way the warship had fled. The unspoken words hung between them, a heavy fog in the cramped cockpit of the Gongbok. The data core, now hidden in a shielded compartment, seemed to pulse with a silent, unsettling energy. New Daegu wasn't much to look at. It was a collection of old cargo containers, scrapped ship hulls, and fabricated domes bolted to a large, airless asteroid. It was a place for people who wanted to be forgotten independent miners, scavengers, fugitives from a dozen different systems, and a small, scattered community of humans. The landing bay was a cavernous space cut from the rock, its atmosphere held in by a flickering energy field. June guided the Gongbok to its familiar, grease-stained berth with a sigh of weary relief. Their first stop was the communal refectory, a large dome filled with the smell of recycled protein and strong coffee. They needed to see Hyen. Of all the humans on New Daegu, Hyen was the only one who had ever worked with the Galactic Union, a brief and confusing stint as a low-level logistics liaison that had ended badly. He knew things. He sat in his usual corner, a data slate in one hand and a cracked ceramic cup in the other. He was an older man, his face lined from hard years, but his eyes were sharp and watchful. "You two look like you've seen a ghost," Hyen said as they slid into the seats across from him. His voice was a dry rasp. "A ghost ship," June said, keeping his voice low. "A Union derelict." The silent blessing. Hyen's eyebrows went up a fraction. "And you boarded it?" "That was either very brave or very stupid." "It was both," Mina said. She leaned forward. "Hyen, something happened. A Union patrol found us. They had us. They were about to board. Then they saw we were human. They just left. They told us we were free to go and ran away." Their commander sounded scared. For a long moment, Hyen said nothing. He took a slow sip of his coffee, his gaze drifting to the rough rock ceiling of the dome. When he looked back at them, his expression was grave. "So you finally saw it for yourselves," he said. "Saw what?" June asked, frustration creeping into his tone. "What is it?" "The edict," Hyen said quietly. He set his cup down. "It's not a law you'll find in any of their public databases. It's not discussed in open council. But every Union captain, every soldier, every diplomat knows it. It's the first, last, and most important rule they are given." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "Over 100 years ago, when our generation ships first stumbled into what is now Union space, we were met not with welcome wagons, but with a blanket decree. It was delivered to every member species, from the mightiest to the smallest. It has one clause: humans are forbidden from interference, contact, or harm." Mina blinked. "Forbiddens? By who? Why?" "By the Union High Council," Hyen said. "As for why, the official reason was galactic stability. A lie, of course. The real reason is buried. Earth was quietly quarantined. Not with ships or blockades, but with paperwork and threats. Any human vessel that leaves is tolerated, but ignored. We are ghosts to them, June. We are a sleeping hazard. They don't trade with us meaningfully. They don't fight us. They just make sure we are never, ever given a reason to look at them with anger." June thought of the derelict, of the dead crew. "But they don't help us either. We found a ship full of their own people, dead. They didn't care. They only cared that we were there." "Exactly," Hyen nodded. "The rule isn't about protection. It's about avoidance. Do not harm them isn't for our benefit. It's for theirs. Think about it. Have you ever been attacked by a Union pirate? Has any human colony ever been raided by a species that answers to the Union? June and Mina exchanged a look. It was true. Human settlements were poor. They were rough. They fought among themselves sometimes. But the universal dangers of the fringe slavers, raiders, xenophobic alien clans never seemed to target them. They were passed over. It was something they had all quietly accepted as luck. "It's not luck," Hyen said, as if reading their thoughts. "It's policy. Any group that harms a human and is caught by the Union is made an example of, utterly erased. So the word spread through the criminal underworld too. Humans are bad business. Leave them alone." "But why?" Mina insisted, her hand resting on the table near where the data core was hidden in her pouch. "What did we do?" Hyen shrugged, a gesture of deep frustration. "That I could never find out. The records are sealed behind levels of security I couldn't touch. The old-timers who were there are all dead or silent. The only thing I ever heard, a whisper from a drunk Volante clerk, was that it wasn't something we did. It was something we proved we would do. A demonstration." "A demonstration of what?" June asked. "Of vengeance," Hyen said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "A promise. You hurt one of us, we hurt all of you. Not a war. Not a battle. A removal. The story goes that one species, a long time ago, didn't believe we were a threat. They thought we were weak, new to the stars. They attacked a human ship. Just one." He looked at both of them, his eyes bleak. "And that species is not around anymore. Not a trace. The Union cleaned it up, covered it over, and made the law so it would never, ever happen again. They fear us, June. They fear what happens when we are pushed." The refectory noise seemed to fade away around them. June felt cold. The universe was suddenly a different shape. Humanity wasn't ignored because it was insignificant. It was ignored because it was a bomb the galaxy was desperately afraid of setting off. "What do we do with this?" Mina asked, her fingers now touching the pouch. "You live with it," Hyen said. "Like the rest of us. You keep your head down. You take your scrap. You don't ask questions. That data core you're not so subtly hiding? Sell it to a broker who doesn't ask questions. Take the money. And forget what you saw on that patrol ship. Their fear is not our problem." But as June looked at Mina, he saw the same thought in her eyes that was growing in his own. It was their problem now. They had touched the mystery. They had seen the fear firsthand. The glowing core in Mina's pouch wasn't just data. It was a key to a door the entire galaxy had locked shut. They thanked Hyen and left the refectory. Outside, in the grimy corridor that led to the living modules, they stopped under a flickering light. "He's wrong," Mina said softly, not looking at June. "I know," June replied. "We can't unsee it. We can't unknow it." June stared down the dark corridor, listening to the distant hum of the colony's machinery, the simple, struggling sound of human survival. They were ghosts, living in the cracks of a galaxy that had deemed them too dangerous to touch. But why? What was the true story? The weight of the unknown settled on him, heavier than any cargo. Forgetting was no longer an option. The silence of the Union, their panicked retreat, had asked a question. And he knew, with a quiet certainty, that they were going to have to find the answer. Back in the cramped, lived-in chaos of June's quarters aboard the Gongbok, the data core sat on a small workbench, glowing with a soft, persistent blue light. It was a stark, alien contrast to the human clutter around its spare parts. Old ration wrappers, a faded photo of a green earth forest. Mina had been working on it for hours, her brow furrowed in concentration. A delicate headset linking her to the core's access port. June watched, leaning against the doorframe. He was cleaning an old plasma torch, the routine motion calming his nerves. The conversation with Haiyan had changed the air they breathed. Every shadow in the colony felt like it held a secret. "It's not like any Union security I've seen," Mina muttered, her fingers tapping on a portable keypad. "It's old. Really old. The encryption protocols are elegant, not just brute force locks. It's like it's meant to be read, but only by someone smart enough to ask the right questions." "Can you ask them?" June asked. "I'm trying to be smart," she said, a slight smile touching her lips. She entered another sequence. The core's light pulsed faster, then steadied. A holographic interface, shimmering with lines of unfamiliar glyphs, sputtered to life above the workbench. "Got it. It's translating to standard. This isn't a Union log. It's older. It's from the Silari Concord. They were a major power before the Union unified this arm of the galaxy. They've been gone for centuries." The first file was a visual record. It showed a sleek, organic-looking Solari scout ship observing from a distance. The view screen focused on a small, boxy human vessel, a second-generation colony sleeper, drifting with a damaged engine. The image was grainy, ancient. A calm, melodic Silari voice narrated, the translation appearing below. Asterisk observation log. Cycle 42. The nascent species human displays standard Tier 3 technological capacity. Limited threat profile. Their vessel is disabled. A Trell raiding party is approaching. We shall observe the interaction for our ongoing study of predator-prey dynamics in spacefaring cultures. Asterisk, the scene shifted. The Trell ships, angular and brutal, surrounded the human vessel. They boarded it. The Solari observers noted the expected outcome. The humans would be subdued, their resources taken, the survivors likely enslaved. It was, the log stated, a common occurrence on the frontier. Then something changed. The human ship went dark for a moment. When internal cameras from the Trell raiders provided a glimpse, the humans were not surrendering. They were fighting back with tools, with fire extinguishers, with their bare hands. They were losing, but they were not stopping. The Solari observer's voice lost its melodic calm. Unexpected resilience. Resistance continues beyond rational survival parameters. The log fast-forwarded. The Trell, annoyed by the struggle, executed 10 humans on the spot as a warning. They left the crippled ship, taking a handful of prisoners and the best scrap. The next log entry was from a standard week later. The Solari scout was monitoring Trell communications. There was panic. A Trell outpost on a moon had been attacked. Not by a rival clan, but by a single salvaged human life pod modified with a mining laser. All Trell at the outpost were dead. The humans had taken weapons in a short-range ship. Cycle by cycle, the logs told a chilling, relentless story. The handful of human prisoners had escaped, or been rescued by other humans who had heard the distress call. The conflict spread. It was not a war. It was a hunt. The humans learned Trell tactics, then used them against their teachers. They turned Trell technology against them. They struck at supply lines, at communications relays, at isolated mining operations. They never met the Trell in a fair fight. They ambushed. They sabotaged. They vanished. The Solari observer's voice was now full of something June recognized: awe and deep, cold fear. The Trell High Command has issued a bounty. They have dispatched hunter-killer fleets. The humans should be exterminated within a cycle. The next entry was a year later. The Silari were observing from much, much farther away. The Trell have lost 17 vessels. 3 outposts have been obliterated. The humans are not using advanced weapons. They are using Trell weapons, taken and improved. Their adaptation rate is geometrically increasing. They are not seeking territory. They are seeking erasure. Mina paused the playback. The room was silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. June realized he had stopped cleaning the torch. He was gripping it so tightly his knuckles were white. "Keep going," he said, his voice hoarse. The final log was not video. It was audio only, and the Solari voice was trembling. Final observation. The Trell Central Colony has fallen. It was not a fleet that defeated them. It was a plague. A bioagent engineered from a native Trell fungus, weaponized by human scientists who, 6 cycles ago, had no concept of interstellar biology. The Trell are gone. Not defeated. Not conquered. Removed. The humans have withdrawn to their damaged ship. They are sending a message on a repeating broadband frequency. A click and a new voice filled June's quarters. It was a human voice, speaking in old standard English, calm, clear, and utterly terrifying. "This is Captain Elias Vance of the Earth Colony vessel Pilgrim's Promise. You took our people. You harmed our people. You are now finished. Let this be heard. You harm one of us. You harm all of us. We will find you. We will learn you. And we will end you. This is our promise." The message repeated once, then the log ended. The blue light from the data core seemed to burn in the sudden darkness of the room. Mina took off her headset slowly. She looked at June, her face pale. They wiped out an entire species. Because they took a few prisoners and killed 10 people. June finally set the plasma torch down. His mind was reeling, trying to fit the pieces together. The calm, terrifying promise of Captain Vance. The Solari witnessing it all. The Solari Concord. They saw this. They must have taken this data to whatever became the Galactic Union. This isn't a myth. It's a historical record. A warning label. The Union didn't make the rule to be nice, Mina whispered. They made it out of terror. They saw what we do when we're pushed. They saw that we don't just fight back. We study. We learn how to destroy you, specifically using your own tools. And we don't stop. Hyen's words came back, sharp and clear. It was something we proved we would do. The data core's light dimmed to its idle glow. It had given up its secret. The mystery of the forbidden status was solved. Humanity was not a victim in the galaxy. It was a sleeping monster, and the galaxy had built a fence around it with the clearest sign possible. Do not provoke. June felt a hollow feeling in his chest. It was one thing to be ignored. It was another to know you were feared like a natural disaster. What did that make him? What did that make Mina, or Hyen, or any of the struggling people on New Negu? Were they just the quiet embers of a fire that had once burned a starfaring race to ashes? "We have to destroy the core," June said finally. Mina looked at him, shocked. "What? This is proof. This is history." "It's a weapon," June said, his voice firm. "If the wrong person sees this, if some arrogant alien warlord sees this and thinks it's a challenge, or if some human fanatic sees it and thinks it's a blueprint, it could start it all over again. The Union was right to bury this. Some doors should stay locked." He reached for the core, but Mina's hand was faster. She covered it, not to take it, but to stop him. "No," she said. Her eyes were wide, but not with fear, with a dawning, awful understanding. "June, don't you see? The Union isn't protecting the galaxy from us out of the goodness of their hearts. They're managing us. They're keeping us in the dark, poor, and divided so we can never do that again. This core, it doesn't just tell us what we did. It tells us what we are. We have a right to know who we are, even if it's terrible." They stared at each other over the glowing cylinder, the ghost of Captain Vance's promise hanging in the air between them. The past had just reached into their present and grabbed them by the throat. The quiet, scraping life on the fringe was over. They now carried the truth. And the truth, they both realized with a sinking certainty, was the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. 3 days after unlocking the core's secret, a heavy quiet had settled over June and Mina. They moved through their routines on New Daiju like sleepwalkers, the weight of history pressing down on every thought. The data core was now hidden in a shielded locker in the Gyeongbok's engineering crawlspace, but its presence was a constant hum in the back of their minds. They had not decided what to do with it. They had not told Hyen the full truth. They were trapped in a horrible, knowing silence. A decision was made for them. It began with the colony's proximity alarms, a harsh, wailing shriek that cut through the asteroid's perpetual gloom. June was in the market bartering for water filters. Mina was on the Gyeongbok, running diagnostics. Through the thick viewing ports of the communal dome, June saw them. 3 ships, descending fast. They were not Union designs. They were jagged, patchwork vessels, dripping with weapon pods and scavenged armor. Pirate clan signatures flashed on the colony's crude scanners, but these were no ordinary raiders. Their transponder codes were masked by a powerful scrambler, a signature June had only heard tales of, the Kraal's teeth. Kraal, a name spoken in worried whispers on the fringe. He was a Volante, a species known for pride and physical strength, who had rejected Union authority to build his own petty empire through fear and plunder. He did not believe in old stories or ghost laws. The colony's meager defenses, a few retrofitted mining lasers powered up, painting the incoming ships with targeting light. It was a useless gesture. A single pulse cannon blast from the lead ship silenced them, melting the emplacements into slag. The attack was swift, brutal, and precise. Kraal's ships didn't aim to destroy the colony. They aimed to own it. Landing craft slammed into the main bay, their ramps dropping before the dust settled. Hulking, armored Volante mercenaries stormed out, backed by a mix of other alien species hungry for loot. They met little resistance. The miners and scavengers of New Daegu were tough, but they were not soldiers. Stun blasts and neural whips cracked through the air. People screamed and fell. June ducked behind a collapsed storage unit, his heart hammering. He saw Kraal himself stride from a landing craft. The warlord was immense, his natural Volante crest adorned with rings of precious metal, his scaled hide covered in trophies from forgotten battles. He carried a heavy plasma rifle casually, as if it were a walking stick. "Find the humans." Kraal's voice boomed through a translator unit, harsh and guttural. "The ones from the Gyeongbok. I want the core they took from the Union ghost ship, and I want the humans alive." For now, they had been sold out. Someone in the colony, desperate for credit or favor, had talked. The data core's rumor had reached the wrong ears. Kraal didn't want to test the old law because he feared it. He wanted to test it because he thought it was a lie told by weaklings. June tried to move, to get back to the ship, but a shock staff caught him in the side. Pain, white-hot and paralyzing, shot through him. He collapsed, gasping, as a heavy boot pressed down on his chest. Above him, a scarred Volante sneered. On the Gyeongbok, Mina heard the invasion over the open cones. She sealed the ship's hatch, but she knew it wouldn't hold against a dedicated breach. Her hands flew over the console, sending a coded distress burst on the standard human emergency frequency, the old, simple SOS used by every human vessel since the first days of space. It was a prayer, not a plan. Who would come? Other scavengers? They were days away. She was trying to rig a power overload in the secondary systems when the main airlock shuddered. With a scream of tearing metal, it was blasted inward. 3 mercenaries charged in. Mina fought, using a wrench, her small frame and fury no match for their armor and strength. They pinned her, clamped binders on her wrists, and dragged her Kicking and shouting back into the ruined landing bay, they threw her down next to June, who was struggling to sit up, one hand pressed to his ribs. Krall loomed over them. He held the data core, which his troops had ripped from its hiding place. He turned it over in his claws, the blue light reflecting in his cold, black eyes. "So this is the treasure," Krall rumbled. "A little light and some old stories." He looked down at them. "And you are the Forbidden's fruit. You don't look dangerous. You look broken." "The Union." June coughed, the pain sharp. "They have a law. I know their coward's law." Krall spat, the translator buzzing with his contempt. "Do not harm the humans. A fairy tale to frighten children. I am not a child. I am Krall, and I do not fear stories." To prove his point, he backhanded Mina with a casual swipe of his arm. The force of it lifted her off the ground. She landed hard, a line of blood tracing from her lip. A collective gasp, mixed with horror, came from the captured colonists. June roared, trying to lunge, but a mercenary's boot stomped down on his leg, holding him fast. The pain was blinding. "You see?" Krall announced to the whole bay, to his own troops, to the universe. No lightning from the sky. No Union fleet to save them. A story. He kicked June in the stomach for good measure. "Take the female to my ship. We will see what other secrets she has. Kill the male here. Let the galaxy watch. Let them see the law is broken." As a mercenary leveled a blaster at June's head, Mina screamed, "No!" But the scream was not just hers. It was lost in a new sound-arising chorus of engine whines from outside the bay. Not the deep roar of Krall's ships, but the higher-pitched, strained whir of civilian drives. On the bay's external scanners, which were still active on a cracked view screen, lights appeared. 1, then 3, then a dozen. Ships. Ugly, patched-together ships. A battered mining scow. A fuel hauler with mismatched thrusters. A long-range courier with a hastily welded armor plate. The Gyeongbok's distress signal had been heard. They were human ships. They did not form a battle line. They did not hail Krall. They simply moved, as if by some unspoken agreement, to block the mouth of the landing bay, blocking Krall's route to open space. They were outgunned 100 to 1. They were not a navy. They were a blockade made of scrap and desperation. Krall stared at the screen, his crest flaring in irritation. What is this? More gnats to swat? Open fire. Clear a path. One of his ships, hovering on guard outside, fired a warning shot at the nearest human vessel, an old orbital tug. The blast scorched its hull but didn't penetrate. In response, the tug didn't fire back. It turned its bulky nose and began to drift, slowly and deliberately, directly into the path of Krall's largest gunship. It was a move of sheer, suicidal stubbornness. A voice crackled over the general frequency, old and weathered. "You got people of ours in there, Krall." It was Captain Su-jin of the Stalwart, a methane hauler June knew from the trade lanes. "You hurt M. That makes this our business. Let M go." Krall laughed, a sound like grinding stones. "Or what? You will tickle my ship to death. You are nothing." "Maybe," came another voice, younger, tense. It was from the courier ship. "But you hurt one of us. Now you're looking at all of us here, and every other human who hears about this. That's how it works." For the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed Krall's face. This was not in the script. They were supposed to cower. They were supposed to obey the law of the strong. This quiet, collective refusal, this wall of fragile ships piloted by grim-faced men and women on his view screen, was something new. It was not the terrifying vengeance of the old logs. It was something just as formidable: solidarity. A promise, waking up. He looked down at June, and at the bleeding Mina being held by his troops. The data core felt suddenly hot in his hand. He had wanted to break a fairy tale. Instead, he had poked a nest, and the insects were not fleeing. They were surrounding him. "Get to the ship," Kral snarled to his troops, his pride warring with a new instinctive caution. "We have the core. We have a hostage. We will jump from here. If these rust piles try to follow, destroy them." As he turned, June, through the haze of pain, saw it. The Union patrol vessel, the Steadfast Guardian, had just dropped out of warp at the edge of the scanner's range. It was hanging back, watching, not intervening, just observing the breach of their most sacred law. Their inaction was more terrifying than any attack. Kral's mercenaries began dragging Mina toward their landing craft. John tried to shout, but no sound came out. He could only watch as she struggled, her eyes meeting his, full of fear and a fierce, blazing anger. The law was broken. The fence was down, and the galaxy held its breath to see what would happen next. The landing bay was a tomb of held breath and echoing fear. Kral's mercenaries retreated toward their assault craft, dragging a struggling Mina with them. June pushed himself up on one elbow, pain screaming from his ribs and leg. He saw the Volante warlord pause at the ramp of his lander, turning for a final look of contempt at the ragged blockade of human ships still silently filling the bay entrance. The data core was clutched in his clawed hand, its blue glow mocking them. "You see?" Kral's amplified voice boomed again. "Your friends are brave, but bravery is just pain you haven't felt yet." He raised his free hand, ready to signal his gunship outside to open fire on the human vessels. It would be a massacre, but it would clear his path. June's mind raced, a white-hot clarity burning through the pain. The old distress signal, the one from the Corps' recording. Captain Vance's promise. It wasn't just a history lesson. It was a blueprint. A human way of war. He fumbled at his belt, his fingers closing around a small, handheld ship-to-ship communicator, its casing cracked from his fall. He didn't send a message. He switched it to a broadband emergency frequency, the most basic, unencrypted channel that every ship in the system, from the mightiest to the smallest, would automatically monitor. He pressed the transmit button, his voice a raw scrape of air and blood. He didn't say, "Help us." He didn't say, "They have Mina." He repeated the only words that mattered, the truth Kral had laughed at, the promise that had shaped the galaxy. "He harmed one of us," June whispered into the com, his eyes locked on Kral's back. Then he gathered the last of his strength and shouted it, the words echoing in the sudden stillness of the bay. "He harmed one of us." The phrase hung in the air. On the cracked view screen, June saw the reaction. The ragged human ships didn't move, but Kral's gunship pilot hesitated. The phrase was a trigger, an ancient code buried deep in every species' diplomatic memory. In the command frequencies of the distant, watching Union vessel Steadfast Guardian, frantic chatter erupted, then fell into a horrified silence. Kral turned, his crest flushing a dark, angry red. "Kill the noisy one." He snapped, got the mercenary beside June, raised his blaster. At that moment, the comms across every frequency in the bay crackled to life. It was not the voice of Captain Su-Jin or any of the other human captains. It was the cool, precise tone of the Union commander from the Steadfast. "Guardian, Warlord Kral, this is Commander. Tarek of the Galactic Union, you are in violation of the primary edict. You have inflicted harm upon a human. Stand down. Release your hostage. Surrender the core." Kral snarled, "Your edict is dust. I have the prize. I am leaving." "You misunderstand," Tarek's voice came back, grim and final. "The law was not made to protect them. It was made to protect us. You have doomed yourself. The Union will not intervene. And they didn't. The steadfast guardian held its position, a silent, gleaming witness. But the humans did not, as Krall's mercenary tightened his finger on the trigger. The old orbital tug, the one that had taken the warning shot, suddenly fired its heavy-duty industrial grappler. It wasn't a weapon. It was a tool. The magnetic claw shot across the bay, not at the mercenary, but at the support girder above him. It struck, and with a groan of tortured metal, the girder ripped free, crashing down in a cascade of sparks and debris. The mercenary dove aside, his shot going wild. It was the signal. The human blockade moved, not like a fleet, but like a swarm. The fuel hauler vented a cloud of raw hydrogen, obscuring the bay entrance. The courier ship, fast and nimble, darted forward, its crude laser cutters firing not at armor, but at the landing struts of Krall's assault craft. The Gyeongbok, still powered and sealed, suddenly lit its engines at full power, not to fly, but to spin, its hull screeching as it ground against the bay floor, creating a shower of sparks and chaos. It was madness. It was brilliant. It was not an attack. It was a systemic sabotage of Krall's orderly retreat. They weren't trying to destroy him. They were trying to trap him, to delay him, to make his position untenable. In the confusion, June crawled. Every movement was fire. He saw Mina bite down on the arm of the mercenary holding her. The Volante roared and loosened his grip for a second. That was all she needed. She twisted free, kicking his knee and sprinting toward the wreckage and smoke. To the ship. Now, Krall bellowed, firing his plasma rifle into the smoky chaos. His mercenaries scrambled, firing blindly. One blast caught the courier ship as it zipped past, and it spiraled into the bay wall with a sickening crunch. Mina reached June, hauling him up. Together, they stumbled toward the relative cover of the Gyeongbok's torn-open airlock. They weren't trying to escape. They were trying to get to the one place they could fight from. Krall saw them. He saw the core of the disruption, the source of the signal that had turned a scattered mob into a coordinated nightmare. With a roar, he charged through the smoke, knocking his own troops aside. He reached the Gyeongbok's ramp as June and Mina fell inside. The warlord filled the airlock doorway, his weapon raised. Enough! He spat. You are a lesson I will teach the galaxy. June, leaning against a console, met his gaze. There was no fear left, only a cold, exhausted certainty. You already have, he said. You hurt one of us. You just didn't know us, meant every human who would ever hear this story. You thought you were breaking a rule. You were lighting a fuse. Outside, the human ships, seeing the warlord on the Gyeongbok, redoubled their frantic, unorthodox assault. A mining laser from a converted scow sliced through the primary fuel line of Krall's landed assault craft. Volatile chemicals began to spray, filling the bay with acrid smoke and the promise of a chain reaction explosion. Krall hesitated. The bay was becoming a death trap. His clean raid, his defiant test, had collapsed into a desperate, messy brawl he could not control. He looked from the humans before him to the chaos outside, to the silent Union warship watching from the stars. For the first time, the old story didn't seem like a fairy tale. It seemed like a warning he had been too proud to read. With a final, furious snarl, he made his choice. Pride lost to survival. He turned and fled back into the smoke, toward his remaining functional ship, abandoning his troops, abandoning the core which he dropped in his haste. It clattered on the Gyeongbok's deck, its light steady. The explosion, when it came, was contained by the bay's emergency seals, but it was enough. Krall's gunship, damaged and panicked, blasted its way free, trailing fire and debris, and leapt for the warp point, pursued not by weapons fire, but by the silent, watching eyes of the human ships and the judgmental gaze of the Union. Silence descended, broken by alarms and the crackle of fires. The human ships, battered and smoking, held their positions. Slowly, shuttles began to descend from the steadfast Guardian. Later, in the scorched bay, Commander Tarek stood before June and Mina. June's leg was in a splint. Mina's face was bandaged. The Union officer looked older, wearier. "The data core," Tarek said, not as a demand, but as a statement. "You knew what was on it," Mina said. "We have always known. It is our deepest secret, our greatest shame. We did not make you forbidden because you are weak. We made you forbidden because your capacity for focused, adaptive vengeance is the most terrifying force we have ever witnessed. We built a galaxy of peace by ensuring you were never given a reason to unite in wrath." He looked at the battered human ships, at the wounded but unbowed colonists. "Today, you are given a reason." June picked up the core from where it lay. He handed it to Tarek. "Take it. The past should stay buried. But the future is different now, isn't it?" Tarek took the core, its light reflecting in his eyes. "Yes, the law is shattered. The galaxy has seen that the old promise is not forgotten. They will look at you differently now." He paused. "I suggest you look at yourselves differently, too." He left them there, amid the ruins of their home. The human ships began the slow process of docking, of helping the wounded, of assessing the damage. They moved with a new, quiet understanding. They were not just scavengers or exiles anymore. They were the ones the galaxy feared. And as June looked at Mina, and then at the stars beyond the ruined bay doors, he knew the weight of that fear was now theirs to carry and theirs to define. The silence was over.